Bigger than the gold rush, Tanner Cash Money struck digital gold. Starting as a side hustle, he made his first million spotting bugs on Fortune 500 websites through ethical hacking bounties. Now he's a senior director of a large tech company. In this episode, Tanner breaks down how you can land your first bounty, build a killer tech resume, and unlock insider tips from the cybersecurity world. You don't want to miss this. But first of all, tune into these highlights.
You can't just run a security scanner and expect to find a bunch of vulnerabilities that you're going to submit to them and make good money with. There are $50,000 bounties going on, $100,000 bounties going on. There aren't known solutions, right? We're looking for vulnerabilities and bugs that have not been found. And if it's found, it's considered a duplicate and you don't get paid for it. There's nothing in security I'm using in my day-to-day that I learned from school. It's pretty much all self-taught stuff. The way I got my current job is basically from stuff I've done outside of work. AI is big. It's taking over. And I think safety with that is an issue.
Tanner, it's so good to have you today. Since you're an expert in cybersecurity, how did you first discover bug bounty programs and what made you take it more seriously?
Hi, Jerry. Thanks for having me. So yeah, I'm Tanner. I go by Cash Money, and bug bounty programs are something I got interested in. But first, I'll talk a little about what bug bounty programs are. So basically, there are a ton of apps we use every day, a ton of websites, all this stuff, and a lot of times they have security vulnerabilities. So bug bounties are basically a way to open up security research to the public, right? So maybe something like Uber, for instance, they will have a bug bounty program. So they say, hey, if you find any vulnerabilities in our applications, you could submit them to us and we'll pay you based on what you find. So it's pretty cool. It basically gets a ton of eyeballs and it augments existing security teams at companies. So for me, the way I got into it was, I was always interested in security ever since I was in high school. Really enjoyed, tinkering with things and kind of messing around, digging into the file system and all that stuff. And I would do some things called CTFs, which are capture the flags. So they're basically security challenges that are set up that are intended to be solved, right? So it's like they'll make a vulnerable website and they give you the opportunity to try to find the vulnerability. And it's just a way to practice. And it's kind of like a giant puzzle, right? But there's an answer to it. So I was doing that back in high school. And then once it came time for going to university, I decided to do computer science and spent my time doing that. And once I graduated with a computer science degree, I was focused on security. I said, okay, I want to get a job in security. That's what I want to do. It was difficult, because at that point I didn't have real professional experience in security. It was more of me tinkering around and doing CTFs. But I just could not land a job that was doing security, doing vulnerabilities, all that kind of stuff, or finding vulnerabilities. So what I did was I joined a startup and did software engineering, and that was great. Great way to build a foundation. Did that for some time, and then internally within that company, I switched to a security position. So at that point, I started gaining some real-world security experience. And during that time, I saw on the news or just, coming up in articles and stuff, United Airlines was having a bug bounty program. And that's pretty much the first time I heard about it. And they were giving out miles based on what you found, but it was running for a while. I didn't think I'd be able to find anything. I figured, okay, this is, people have been looking at this forever. It's super mature. They're a huge company. I'm not sure what I'm going to find, but let me just take a stab at it and we'll see. So I went and I decided to log into my United Airlines account, and during that process, I had to reset my password because I hadn't logged in so long. So while I was resetting my password, I was just paying attention to how exactly it works. And during that flow, I found a pretty significant flaw in the reset password procedure. And I was like, I think this is a vulnerability. It seems like it's a pretty big deal. So I went and I submitted to them, and it took some time, but eventually they acknowledged it as a vulnerability and they paid me with 250,000 miles. So at that point I was like, oh, wow, okay, I could do this. This is cool. And then I started doing some more exploring, and I found a site called HackerOne, And HackerOne is basically a platform where a bunch of companies could sign up for, and it's almost like a directory to view where you could find companies on there and find what you want to hack, what you want to look at, any apps you use, and start digging and then submitting vulnerabilities and getting paid real money for it.
Holy cow, isn't that a great story? Eventually, you became so good at your job, you received recognition from a legend, Steve Wozniak. How did you tell us the story how you met Steve Wozniak, the co-founder of Apple?
Yes. So, you know, in the community, as you hack, they'll have hacking events, and they're pretty cool. They basically invite a bunch of hackers to say a specific location, and there's some targets, and it's sponsored by the companies themselves. So it's like there'll be a platform, say maybe HackerOne will sponsor something, or there's a bunch of other platforms. But then also the companies that you're hacking are sponsors as well. And it takes a bunch of people, where a bunch of people go to it, and then basically submit whatever vulnerabilities they find during that time period, and you get paid in real time. And what happened was, got invited to Ukraine for a hacking event, which was an awesome experience. And I teamed up with one of my friends, Jack, over there, who's an excellent hacker. And we started finding a bunch of vulnerabilities. We submitted them, and the grand prize for finding the most bugs during that event was to be able to meet Steve Wozniak and get recognition and awarded by him. So that was an absolutely great experience.
Oh wow, what a cool story. And you showed me the picture where you met him inside the Antonov, right? The world's biggest plane. That was so
Yes,
cool.
that
Wow.
plane was insane. It was, yes, the world's largest plane. And I mean, there's rows of chairs in it. It's huge. And unfortunately, that plane, I believe that exact one ended up getting destroyed during the war, but it was great to have the opportunity to board it.
Fantastic experience. And what was the first major vulnerability that you found? And in monetary terms, how much did you earn for it?
Yeah, so I got invited to a hacking event in Las Vegas. So every year there's a big security conference called DEF CON in Las Vegas. And it spans, I mean, it gets so many people, but it spans all areas of security. And at that time, HackerOne was actually having an event over there, and they invited me to participate. And during the event, it's a couple customers they have, which are big companies. They're all Fortune 500 companies. They're all very mature in the sense of they have great engineers, they have entire security teams, they regularly get tested. They're just not easy to hack, right? So when we're trying to hack these companies, there aren't known solutions, right? We're looking for vulnerabilities and bugs that have not been found. And if it's found, it's considered a duplicate and you don't get paid for it. If they know about it internally, you don't get paid for it. So you have to find unique vulnerabilities. And when you're dealing with companies that are, have this kind of presence, they have huge security teams. So it makes it makes it very challenging. It's like a puzzle where you don't know if there's a solution to it. So this was very early on, and I had spent a lot of time on one of the targets. Many hours trying to grind on it. It takes a lot of time. Like you will easily sink 10, 12 hours on something and come up with nothing. That's the nature of it. But as you start making progress, it's motivating. You'll find a little bit of something that looks a little weird. Maybe you'll be navigating through the website and you'll land on a page that looks very old. And usually when something looks really old, like it was developed a decade ago, that's a good area to look for vulnerabilities. Because modern technologies are it's a little bit harder to write vulnerable code with modern technologies. There are different types of vulnerabilities, but generally speaking, the older something is, the more vulnerable it tends to be. So just clicking around for a while, dug into this, and I ended up finding a pretty critical bug. And it was so deep in there, the company asked me how I even got to this page because it was so deep in the system. And it ended up paying $14,000 that day for it. And it actually won the award for best bug of the event, which is awesome because this was when I was just getting started. So it was possibly the most motivating thing for me, I think. Because from there, then, I was amongst people who have been doing it for a lot longer than I have. I was amongst people who are very well known. And for me, just getting started, finding that bug, and just proving to myself that, oh, I could do it, was great. And then I just kept finding more bugs from there.
That must have been the turning point of your career. In one day, you earned $14,000.
Yes. Over time, also, the bounties have been increasing. When these events first started and earlier in the earlier days, $10,000 bounties were considered very significant and rare. $20,000 bounties started becoming a thing, and those were seen as, ridiculous. And now, there are $50,000 bounties going out, $100,000 bounties going out. So there are like the market has basically just realized the value in it, and companies are prioritizing it more in their budgets to pay more to hackers for critical vulnerabilities.
Oh, wow. What a cool industry to break into. And how can someone without a computer degree break into ethical hacking or security?
Yeah. So what's interesting is, a lot of the people in the community actually don't have computer science degrees. A lot of them don't have degrees at all. Some of them are still in high school. They're, it's very much a meritocracy in that sense where it doesn't matter what your background is. It's more of like, hey, if you could find vulnerabilities and you could, demonstrate impact to the company, they'll pay you for it. They don't ask what degrees you have. You don't need any qualifications. It's just, are you finding vulnerabilities? Are you helping reduce our exposure and just making us more secure? That's what companies care about. So, having a computer science degree helps in the sense of it helps you get more familiar with technology and stuff, but the security stuff I do on a day to day is not from school. There's nothing in security I'm using in my day to day that I learned from school. It's pretty much all self-taught stuff. And that's the thing is, I'm very passionate about it. So it's something that I spend a lot of time on, so on the weekends after work, I'll see something interesting and, I'm on, Twitter or X now, they have a bunch of people post vulnerabilities on there. Obviously, the ones that are illegal to disclose. And you learn from all those. There's publicly disclosed reports, and publicly disclosed reports are interesting because, with permission from the company that you found the vulnerability in, you could actually publicize it. So there are directories of, just reports that came out. I mean, somebody wrote a book on it called Real World Bug Hunting. My friend Pete, and it's basically just a book that contains a bunch of publicly disclosed reports, and it breaks them down. And those are such a great way to learn because you learn what companies care about, and it shows you the full communication chain also. So, you'll see things from what the researcher found. They'll report it to the company, how the company responded to them, the whole back and forth between it, all the way up until their payout. So, getting started, what I did was I actually went to HackerOne, that's called a Hacktivity page, and I went through, I think, every single publicly disclosed report and took notes on it. Took mental notes, took physical notes, just every single one, just because I wanted to learn what do companies care about, what are they going to pay for. You don't want to you can't just run a security scanner and expect to find a bunch of vulnerabilities that you're going to submit to them and make good money with. Sometimes it'll work and you'll find some bugs with it, but the real bugs that are not going to be duplicates of others and that are going to be unique are ones that are usually found manually or through some custom knowledge or maybe some framework that you developed or something that you've studied and put a lot of time into. You know.
Have you faced any legal or ethical gray areas in this line of work?
Yeah, so I have not had any legal issues or gray areas. I have some friends who have, but those are all accidental. So everything we do is completely legit. Nothing is in a gray area. All the testing we do, we're sure is done with permission of the company themselves. So accidents can happen, right? If you're testing site A and you see another domain for site B and you think that's in scope, so maybe you accidentally test a payload on there. Sure, that's out of scope. You shouldn't be doing that. Accidents can happen, but it's pretty rare. So the cases I know they were just accidental. There was nothing came out of it. I make sure I read the scope documents before starting, so when you start with the program, there's a program page and it tells you a little bit about the company, and then also tells you what the scope is and what they care about. And in the scope, it'll have things like their domain. So for instance, if it's Uber, they might say star.uber.com is in scope. So any of those subdomains are in scope. It's not something you really do unless it's specifically in scope, but usually hacking their vendors is not really something. So it's like, I'm not going to hack some vendor they're using to try to get access to an employee's like internal Uber account. That could be on scope. It depends if the company wants it, but generally speaking, it's usually their assets. And they're pretty explicit on things like phishing, and things that involve interacting with humans and tricking them. So writing an email to try to make an employee click it and then enter their password into a malicious site, that's almost always out of scope. In rare cases, that is in scope. I've done an engagement actually, which was interesting, where phishing was in scope or social engineering was in scope, and they had a phone number to call. So part of it was trying to call one of the agents and get them to disclose other customer information because they're trained to not do that. So to them, that's something they really cared about. So they put that in scope. But it really depends on the program, and as long as you abide by those rules, you should be fine. And there are protections also. HackerOne has some protections on where it's like if you're doing everything in good faith, there's it's called like a responsible disclosure policy. Like you should be fine. It's called a safe harbor. Is the term for it.
So you have to build your portfolio from scratch, your resume from scratch. What makes a resume or portfolio stand out to a top tier company?
Yeah, so it's interesting. Also, I think security is a little bit difficult to break into because, like I said, like the problem, I mean, now there are more entry level jobs, but when I was initially looking, it was difficult to find entry level jobs. And a job, it's if you go in without any experience, it's going to be hard for them to teach you everything you need to know. It really takes your own curiosity to find stuff. There's a saying, I don't know who said it, but it's interesting. It's like hacking cannot be taught; it could only be learned, which makes sense, right? So most of the stuff I do is all stuff like the way I got my current job is basically from stuff I've done outside of work. It's like I have my professional experience on there, of course, but the stuff that the company cares about is stuff I've done outside of work because that's more interesting to the company, right? Like that sets me apart also. So when we're trying to hire people, we love to see that. If you've had talks, if you've had blog posts, if you've had something called a CVE, it's like a public vulnerability, and gotten that patch, like that's all significant. That's the stuff we like to see. That shows somebody's passionate about it. And also the field is evolving so quickly where if you don't stay on top of it, you'll fall behind. There's new threats all the time, especially with like AI now. So there's just different stuff that's coming out, and the vulnerabilities today are a little bit different than the vulnerabilities 10 years ago. And I think that's gonna keep being a thing. People develop things differently now than before. So just staying on top of stuff is important, and a lot of times that takes work outside of work to do. But if you're passionate about it, it's not really seen as work. I see it like a hobby. So it's like I doing my hobby, I get better at my job, and not my job, I get better at my hobby. So it's almost like a cycle in that way.
And just out of curiosity, right? There's so many programming languages to learn. Which one do you see that has the most profound impact that is beneficial to your line of work?
Yeah, I mean, the language you use itself isn't so important. I mean, we use a lot of Python just because it's easy to script things with. If you learn one language, you could pretty much, you could read like code in most other languages. Obviously, there's going to be nuances which you might not know the specifics of, but we do a lot of code reviews also. So most of the tests we do are black box, which means we don't have access to anything. It's completely as an outsider, but some of them are white box where they give you access to the code. Sometimes you'll get access to code that you're not as familiar with. But if you have some background in coding and you understand how it works, you know what a function is, what a for loop is and how everything works, and you know what dangerous functions would be, you could kind of use that intuition to help you through, right? Like the majority of the time, some kind of vulnerability is going to stem from user input. So it's something that a user is typing into, say, a form or a page. So just by knowing that, you know where to look in the code, no matter what language it is. So I'll look for, okay, where is user input coming into the system, and then trace that through to see if it's being used in any kind of dangerous fashion.
And what's your take on AI in cybersecurity? Is it a friend or a threat?
I think it's a little bit of both, but I think generally it is a friend. It is, I've added it to my workflow. I know a lot of other people have. It's insanely useful to help, one, like come up with ideas, but also to generate some payloads for stuff. If you're with an unfamiliar system, there's so many technologies. I don't think anybody could be an expert on everything. To just have it explained to you, like what is this file format? What does it do? Or write a program to do, to create a file with this data in it. And it could do it so quickly where doing that manually would take hours or days. Um, the other side of it that's interesting is, there are some safety concerns, which is a little bit different than traditional hacking, but there are some, companies that are running bounty programs on their safety systems. So, for instance, can you ask, say, ChatGPT or some LLM to how to make a nuclear weapon or something like that, right? They don't want you to be able to ask those questions. You shouldn't be able to, right? That could be very dangerous in the hands of the wrong people, right? So there are some programs now which are based on, like, can you prompt engineer in a way to bypass those restrictions? And those are fun because it's so different than traditional hacking. It's something that basically anybody could do because you just have to use your own creativity and your knowledge of, you know, English terminology. You could phrase things. You could maybe trick it to making it think it's in developer mode, so it has less restrictions on it. Like, there's all kinds of prompt injection techniques, which of course they try to protect against. But if you tinker with it enough, a lot of times you will find a way to sneak something through. So that's been super fun.
Personally, do you use AI for your daily work basis?
I do. I've been using it more and more, um, especially to make short scripts for things. That's been the most useful for sure. If you have a list or something, or say you get data in a weird format, you can get it to clean it up very quickly. You can get it to write you a script to, um, you know, clean this data, and also uh, it's good at creating files with specific data in them. So a lot of times when you're hacking, you'll find an upload form, and they'll only expect, or it'll only take in some weird file type, one that you've never heard of before. For instance, like if you do 3D modeling, there's file types for 3D models, right? So it's like, say you're working with a website that takes in an upload for a 3D model. Now, I don't know how that works. Looking it up, it's hard to find, you got to go through documentation. It's hard to come up with that. But I could ask ChatGPT, hey, can you write me a script to generate these types of files? And then that's when I could start playing with it, right? So then I could try injecting malicious stuff into there, and it'll write me a script to do it in 30 seconds. And I just saved myself many hours of reading through documentation and debugging.
Oh, you can use it for minor scrubbing data cases.
Yeah, I mean, I use it for a lot of minor things. There are restrictions on it too, where it's like if you're trying to use it to generate, say, like some unique payloads or something, it will complain and say, hey, I can't do this because of safety reasons. So sometimes you got to prompt around it. I'm hired to do this, or I'm trying to, I'm writing a research paper on this, and then it's like, okay, how would I exploit this? And it'll loosen up a little bit and give you some answers. And it's been pretty helpful. I don't know if it could replace a full-time pen tester. I know there's some tools that do right now that are very good, but it depends on the type of vulnerability you're looking for. Some of the stuff is so deep where you're exploiting things with a bunch of different systems connected together. You have to create accounts in a bunch of places. It would be a little bit difficult for an LLM to take care of it end to end, but I think it's getting there. But even so, I think there's going to be need for researchers always, and people instructing those LLMs, and using it to augment their workflow, not replace their workflow.
And this is a very important question. I think I can only have the expert you answer this. And any prediction for the next big wave in tech or cybersecurity?
Yeah, I mean, maybe at this point it's not a prediction or more of a post-diction where AI is big. It's taking over, and I think safety with that is an issue. That's what I'm probably most interested in right now, which is yeah, like what is going to prevent some bad actor from getting instructions to do something, super nefarious with just typing into ChatGPT and getting an answer and being able to do it with, with household ingredients, all this stuff. Like it makes it very easy and it'll dumb it down for you. If it's using terminology you don't understand, you can say, hey, can you put it in a little more basic terms and it'll do it. So I think in this space, I think AI safety is going to keep expanding. I think it's a really hard problem to solve. There's so many models out there. There's so many open source models out there, but that's an area where I'm paying close attention to, and I think it's exciting. It's fun, and we'll see what happens in the next 5 years or so.
Brilliant.
And the audience, how can they reach out to you?
Yeah, so they could follow me on X. I have my DMs open on there also, so feel free to send a message. My handle is It's Cash Money, and it is spelled ITS, and cash is CACHE, and money.
It's Cash Money. Got it. I'll link it down to the podcast description so the audience can reach out to you. And it has been such an amazing time chatting with you, Tanner. I learned so many more things about the tech security world. You are absolutely brilliant. Such an honor to meet you, Tanner.
Awesome. Thank you, Jerry. Thanks so much for having me. This was great.
Sweatpants Suits interviews the world's most interesting career professionals, uncovering lessons, setbacks, and breakthroughs that shape fulfilling careers. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a like, share, or subscribe. Reach out to me on all your favorite social media platforms. Link in the description below.